Thanks, Greg. Just a few quick comments, and then we'll open up to questions. We started this year with World Series expectations. I think rightfully so, coming off the LCS berth and having a very talented major league roster. Obviously, it was a frustrating and disappointing season. We never really fired on all cylinders. And I think we didn't play the baseball that we thought we were capable of from the starting point of the season. I think personally for myself, it feels like a lost and missed opportunity. It's not every year as a general manager that you can honestly look up at the start of the season and feel like, hey, if we got a few breaks, that we could hoist the World Series trophy. And I felt that way at the start of this year. I think everybody has their own, kind of fluky stat or unlucky story from this year. But I'm a subscriber to the belief that you are what your record says you are, and ultimately we're not playing baseball right now in October. I think we have some incredibly talented people in this organization. I think from our players to our major league manager, our field staff, high performance teams, our R&D groups, Peter Seiler as an owner, Eric and Caroline on the business side. We take our job serious, and I can confidently tell you that we're going to learn from this year and be better for it. Our minor leagues and our scouting group has done some really nice work this year, and I think that's going to put us in a better position for 24 and going forward. And the bar has clearly been raised in San Diego. I think that's a goal that we all had and that leadership team had over the last 5 seasons. And, I think, our group embraces those expectations, and embraces the idea that, that this season, ultimately didn't get to where we wanted to get to. And, our leadership group, I know it's going to be an all out pursuit from myself and from that leadership team, to get to where our incredible fans expect us to be here going forward, which is playing both postseason baseball at this time of year. So that being said, open it up to any questions, and appreciate it, Craig.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started with Kevin AC, Union Tribune.
AJ, what can you say about Bob Melvin's future with the Padres?
Yeah, Bob is our manager, and it's going to be our manager going forward. I think both he and I, a lot's been said obviously in the last few weeks, but both he and I are very excited, about the challenge of getting this group, back to the postseason next year. We've had it. Again, I think from that standpoint, a lot's been said, and I think with Bob and myself, I think we just even in the last couple days, you get a chance to recap and look at some different things, and both of us feel really good about where things are at going forward.
What sort of differences, if any, would there be in the chain of command or the relationship? I mean, how can this be better going forward? What have you thought about in those terms?
Again, I think at the end of the season, the focus for myself was just getting the team to the postseason, and I think some of the conversations, I think from our end, I think what we talked about here in the last couple of days, it's ultimately about how we get this better, how we do this better. I think Bob understands that, for my job, it's to put the roster together. I have a ton of respect for Bob and his experiences and the way he leads our team. He led the team to the LCS last year. I think he's the manager of the club, the GM, and, you work together, you work hand in hand. And I think at times there's a lot of agreement. At times there's going to be healthy conversation, healthy disagreement. But I think we both feel, like ultimately on the big picture items, the belief in this group, the belief in this team, what we need to do to get it going forward. I think we had a chance to kind of reaffirm that in the last few days and feel really good about where we're at moving on.
Hey, I just got one more. If there were to be an opportunity to come up for Bob, would that be something that he could pursue?
Yeah, I think in terms of those questions, I think those are all kind of personal matters and private matters. We never really comment on those in terms of other clubs and interest in any of our employees. I think again with Bob, he's under contract, he's our manager. And I think we're both excited going forward into the off season.
AJ Caswell, MLB.com.
AJ, Peter's statement the other day said that there would be necessary changes made, and so I'm just wondering, like, what you after. I mean, you said the season kind of was a missed opportunity and a missed chance. Like, what are those changes that need to be made then going forward to fix that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every year is different with the roster, so I think we'll get into that here over the next couple of weeks, free agency trades, everything from that standpoint. I think we'll look back and, hey, like, I think some of the things that me and Bob already have talked about, how well did we handle the expectations, talk about, our ability to perform when it mattered most, kind of high leverage situations. I think again, like looking from an offensive standpoint, we, as the year got on, we got better, but ability to handle right-hand pitching, creating a deep and talented bullpen and a deep pitching staff. Those are all different things that we'll continue to talk about, and I think things that are going to have to be better, like going forward. But I think the flip of it is we've got some really talented players here, and we've got a core group of players that have done a ton of winning, both here in San Diego and on other teams. I think it's a good place to start, like moving forward. But I think we're in that process now over the course of the next few weeks and months where we'll evaluate our team, kind of look at some of those things I just mentioned and say, all right, how do we get that going better from a roster standpoint, from a performance standpoint. I think if we can nail a few of those things, we're going to be a pretty good spot next year.
What do you make of the depth issues that this team had in 2023, and then going forward, how can that be addressed, and can it be addressed with a payroll that's potentially less than what you had to work with this year?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's, again, I think we always try, from the team, it's you've got to have, like, really, if you're going to win a World Series, you need to have, supremely talented players and a lot of them. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything different from a team build standpoint. We didn't build the team saying, hey, we're looking to have, 4 superstar players and, that's it. I mean, I think from our standpoint, we look up and, you look at a Ha-Seong Kim, what he did, guys like Cronenworth and Grisham, guys like Campusano and his development, Gary Sanchez. I think, like, 1 through 9, there's we feel like we have a good team, and there's a lot of different ways to build it. There's teams playing in October right now that, if you look at production from players 9 through 13 on their roster, is very minimal, but the top 4 or 5 guys perform very well. There's other teams that 1 through 13 have a pretty good equal balance and blend. So there's no one way to get there. Every year is a little bit different. I think for us, like, this year we didn't get there, and I think next year is going to be a different year, different team, different players. I think we feel confident that from a farm system standpoint, we've got, a group that now getting to AA in the upper levels that is going to be able to help us and provide some more of that depth component. But yeah, I think, like, honestly, I think it's no different every year when we go into the off season, building a quality roster with a lot of different answers and possibilities and options for Bob and his staff. And that involves depth and also some impactful players that perform at their highest level.
If Bob's back, what's the status of the rest of the coaching staff? How do you plan to kind of sort that out? And do you expect the staff to be back?
Yeah, I think, me and Bob, like any other year, me and Bob will sit down here over the course of the next couple of weeks and have those conversations. Feel good about a lot of the coaches that are on our big league staff, and we'll sit down over the next couple of weeks, and as we get to the end of this month, beginning of next month, we'll have our staff in place going forward.
What is it, Dennis Len?
Hey, AJ. AJ Caswell just kind of mentioned this a little while ago, but do you expect payroll to go down from its current level next year? And what does that mean, if that's the case, for how you will put this roster together?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like, we haven't gotten a payroll number yet. I think every year, it's, the next couple of weeks is more of a review process, roster where we're at, sit down with Bob and the coaching staff, get their take and feedback. I think that's really the next steps for us over the course of the next few weeks. And, I think as we get into November, we get a better sense of where things are at from a payroll standpoint. Peter at that point in time will establish, hey, this is where we're at exactly. And then, I think we'll get into the off season, and part of that is determined by who's on the market, what trades present themselves. We have the ability to adjust depending on what situations and what players present themselves. So no real difference to what we've done in the past. I think use the next few weeks to kind of review and figure out where we're at on some different things, get prepared for the off season. As we get into November, we'll get more of a definitive idea of where we're at payroll wise, and then we adjust as we go from there.
What kind of changes are being made, or do you expect to be made with respect to the front office? Any personnel moves there, or player development front? Anything there?
I mean, again, I think we have some really good people, throughout, and I think we see it consistently. You mentioned on the player development side, consistently year in, year out. We've made some trades and we're able to replenish. And I think this year, on the scan, I think that's a testament to our scouting group and our minor league coaching group and our minor league leadership team. But we look every year. I mean, we look every year at ways to get better. If there's talented people out there that we feel like can improve the organization, we'll do that again this off season. And if there are people that we feel like can improve, whether it's the minor league component or our big league component, we're always open to adding if we need to do that. But we feel like we have a pretty talented group down there that's done a good job.
And next we'll go to John Howard.
Thanks, Greg. AJ, what kind of priority will be put on re-signing Blake Snell?
Yeah, Blake, obviously had a Cy Young caliber season, and I think we're hoping he wins that award, and he's well deserving to win that award. So, the 3 years he's been here, he's performed at a super high level. We'll sit down. He's earned the right to be a free agent, so we'll sit down. I think there's high interest from the organization in terms of having a pitcher like Blake. In our rotation, those are the kind of guys that help you get to October. He helped us get there last year and performed. Has performed well in October. So, we'll sit down with Blake and Scott Boras and have those conversations in the offseason, prioritize things, and go from there. But from an interest standpoint, he obviously pitched great. And, I think, making himself a big part of the organization the last few years, I think all those things are reasons why we want Blake here with us.
And same question about Josh Hader. Is there any interest in re-signing him, or will you and Bob be happy to see him go since he's not willing to pitch more than 1 inning or 3 days in a row?
Yeah, Josh, again, I think, he's somebody else that, from the past 2 years, making the trade to bring Josh in, he's one of the best in the game at what he does, and he's a guy that's going to get Cooperstown consideration down the road. Last year in the postseason, he was a huge difference maker for us, in the playoff series wins, had an all-star season this year. So I think from that standpoint, you need those kind of guys in the back of your bullpen. We'll have conversations with Josh and his agents as well, kind of figure out where things stand up. But it's the next few weeks, that's what this is about. It's kind of like, hey, this is the these are the marching orders. This is where we're going to go from a budget standpoint. I think at that point in time, we can prioritize the different players and the different possibilities, but Josh is is an elite performer, and we'll have those conversations about, where he fits in for us this offseason.
All right. Thanks, AJ.
Go to Marty Caswell.
Hi, AJ. Were there any extension talks with Bob Melvin, or both sides, him going into the final year as a lame duck manager?
Again, I think consistent with what we always say when it comes down to contract talks and any kind of negotiation, our policy, those are things we're not going to talk about publicly. So I think from that standpoint, again, consistent with how we always do it, we're not going to comment on any of that publicly.
And AJ, since you became GM, you've gone through quite a few managers and a lot of different coaches. After this leadership meeting yesterday, do you think that you need to change anything about how you deal with staff, with the baseball side?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think now it's 10 years we've hired, and I've hired 3 managers, so over the course of 10 years, it's honestly I think, again, in the coaching industry, it's probably pretty consistent. I think if you looked around the league, I think from my standpoint, again, style wise, it's, consistent throughout the organization, where it's, it's open, it's collaborative. The best ideas come from all different areas of the room. We try to hire really talented, experienced people, and and allow them to do their job and kind of shape the direction of the different conversations. And then when we make a decision, there can be disagreement, which is always healthy, or can be healthy, and then we make a decision on whatever issue we're trying to tackle, and then we kind of set up, hey, we're gonna review it and see how it went. So that's the process that we do. We do that from the major leagues all the way to the scouting side, the minor league side, and ultimately it's something I believe in.
Last thing, do you think the relationship with Bob will be stronger going forward, considering the discussions that you've had over the past couple of days?
Yeah, again, I think with Bob, like it's always healthy to have, to have open and honest conversations. I think some of the meeting from Monday, I think that's a little bit overblown, honestly, too. I mean, we do that every year. I mean, Bob and me last year, kind of a very similar conversation following the NLCS, where it's just a recap on where things are at, and more of a preview of setting things up for the future. So, again, I think from that standpoint, it's always healthy when you get a chance to sit down and talk open and honestly. We do that a lot during the season as well. So, I think, I'm not speaking for Bob, but I know he's excited. It was his words yesterday, and I think both of us, looking forward to tackling the project of the off season.
Melissa May.
Hi, AJ. One thing that was definitely consistent for you this season were your fans. You said an all-time single season attendance record, also 61 sellouts, including 59 at Petco Park, also a franchise record. What would you like to say to your fans? And then also, when you hear those numbers, what does that say about your Padres fans?
Yeah, I think from a fan base standpoint, it's incredible the support every single night that our fans give to our team. I mean, they're passionate about this club. I think it's because they believe in this team. They believe in the players. And I think from the organization standpoint, I think we owe it to our fan base to do everything we can in our power to put a competitive winning product on the field. And I take it very serious, in this job. I love interacting with the fans, having conversations. I love the back and forth I see on Twitter all the time, because it means people care, and I think that's one of the goals that we set out here is, we want to make sure this is a team that year in, year out, people care about, people talk about. And again, I think it means that people really believe that we have a chance to win a championship. And when we don't do it, it's, the disappointment is there. And obviously when we have, I think it's going to make it even that more special when we do it here in the next few years.
And just how does it make you feel that you had, 59 sellout crowds at Petco Park? I mean, that's got to feel pretty good as a GM.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a compliment to the whole organization. I think that's from Eric and his group. That's from the baseball group. That's our scouts, our coaches. It's definitely our players. Like people that we have players that people want to come see play, and I think it speaks to a belief that our fans know that we can win a lot of baseball games. I think those are the two things that people want to come out to see: is talented players do their thing, and winning baseball. And I think from that standpoint, that's a big part of it, and I think that's something that we're all really proud of, and feel that responsibility to the fan base to make sure that next year we're playing baseball at this time of year.
Bernie Wilson.
Yeah, AJ, have you gotten any mandates from ownership about not meddling in Bob's job if that was indeed an issue?
I mean, I haven't. I mean, I think again, I can only talk to, I think from my standpoint, it's there are conversations. It's I think the process for myself, it's about throwing topics on the table, hiring talented people, again, like making sure that we have a good process for our decisions. We do that up and down throughout the organization. And again, you have to, as a GM and a manager. There's no organizations where it's like, hey, the GM does this and the manager does that, and there's no collaboration, no togetherness. That doesn't work at all. So I think from the standpoint, again, I think there's a lot to me. give Bob his space to do his job as a manager. I don't feel like, there's nobody from myself or, our front office that, hey, this is the script, this is how you run the game. This is the lineup you have to run. I think it's more about, hey, here's like do you have the resources? Here's like, have some conversations, have some questions that are out there. And then when the game comes, it's full support, and that's the way we've gone about it. I think that's healthy. But I don't see any teams really that it's like, hey, the manager and the GM, nobody's, don't talk, let each other do their own thing. I mean, it's a together thing, it's a we thing. And I think we understand that and know that. And I think that's all part of the last few days as well.
A follow-up, how did it get to the point that in one of these anonymous reports, your relationship with Bob was described as a quote unquote civil war?
Yeah, I think that's, again, like, I think the anonymous quotes and the unnamed sources, I just don't give any, we don't give any credibility to that. And I think at the end of the year, I didn't say much. And honestly, it's just because we were still in contention. I think with our players and our staff, the focus was how do we, we knew it was a long shot, but it was like, yeah, let's keep grinding down the stretch, and let's try to get in the postseason, and then we'll talk about it when we get to this point in the off season. And I think from my standpoint, a lot's been overblown, and I think I think when we talk about, like I said, I mean, the reports, hey, we don't speak, and we're talking 4 or 5 times a day. Personally, there's I think we have a friendship, and I think that all those things are, I don't put a lot of stock into the unnamed reports and sources and stories that are out of context. I think it's hard to comment on any of those things unless you have real specifics and details and names attached to those things.
Okay, final thing from me. Do you have a game plan with Juan Soto for the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think with Juan, he obviously, really settled in here this year in year 2 in Petco. He's a dynamic offensive force. The ability to get on base and do damage is, if not one of the best, maybe the best in all of baseball. And I think, again, like from our standpoint, we'll go down that path this offseason and talk to Juan and his representatives, kind of see where things stand there. Because, I think, again, like what he was able to contribute, what he, as he settled in as the year went on, he was a consistent offensive force, one of the best in the game. And, we'll have those conversations here when we get into the offseason, kind of seeing where his head is at and figure out if there's some common ground.
We'll go back to AJ Caswell.
AJ, considering all that, would you consider trading Juan Soto this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think those questions and kind of like the different paths we go. I think that's honestly that's our process over the next couple of weeks, is kind of figuring out directionally, hey, what's out there, what's not. We've never been a group that says no to anything, so I wouldn't read into that. That's just kind of like the way we operate. But again, like I think the first path is going to be to go down the road of having conversation with Juan and Scott Boras, and kind of seeing where the head is at there. And, we'll look at our roster, like, from an overall standpoint, but we've got some really core key pieces that are in place going into next year. Juan's a huge part of that in the middle part of the order. And I think, again, like any as we get into the off season, our first line with Juan is trying to see what this looks like with him being part of the Padres going forward.
And then just to follow up on what Marty asked, I know you don't comment on specific situations, but Bob would be going into his final season. Is that under contract? Can you confirm that? Is that the situation right now?
Yeah, I think, again, like, as far as like contract talks, what that looks like, I think from our standpoint, it's something that, I prefer not to comment on, and I do that with everybody when we those are personnel matters, and from a company, from an organization standpoint, don't really get into that. But for Bob, he's under contract, and I think we'll leave it at that.
Back to Dennis.
AJ, with Peter Seller recovering from his medical procedure the other month, and I was wondering, how involved has he been right now with the decisions you're making, and who is making decisions with him? Now that he's maybe just a little bit less involved than usual.
Yeah, I think I think we talked about Peter's engaged in all these processes, and I think I think from that standpoint, understand where Peter's at, and I think it's also about his recovery, and I think we're all excited to see him back at Petco on a regular basis, and moving forward with us.
You've been the president and GM for a few years now. Do you expect that to change, or are you going to hire or name a GM under you? And what is that going to look like going forward?
Yeah, I think it's something that's been on the table that we've talked about, and throughout different points last off season and this year. And again, I think the biggest thing for myself, conversations I'll have with continue to have with Peter. I think we just want to have as good a team, as good a leadership team as you can have, and I feel good about the current group. But I also always going to be open if we can add somebody in place that. Somebody that brings different experiences to the team that can help us, perform better on the field, and give us some different perspectives. I'll always be open to that, and I think that's something, again, as we get into the off season, adding to, or having some different skill sets, some people that contribute. I think we'll continue having those conversations as we get into the next couple of months.
And last thing for me, if you don't mind, it's as you mentioned, it's been almost 10 years for you. Few different manager changes, a lot of coaching staff changes, as Marty mentioned. Why, in your opinion, are you the right person to keep leading the ship going forward?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we've the really since 2020, I think the idea was, hey, be in a position where every single year in year out, we have a competitive team that's that can play into October. And last year we played, we were able to get to the LCS for the first time since '98. I think as a GM, you try to establish that, we have a core group. I think our marching orders, and, I think what we're, from a philosophy standpoint, you get core players, key players that we think are supremely talented, and make sure they're here for a while. We believe in those guys, and that may mean that certain seasons, or portions of seasons, there's some up and down, but over the course of a 6 or 7 year period, when you come to see the Padres, you're going to see guys like Tatis and Machado and Cronenworth and Darvish and Musgrove. And then you got to supplement that with talented young players. And I think we've shown the ability to, to have players in the system that, that are talented and perform. And, I think when you add those things up, I think, a team that's been competitive at the big league level, with a fan base that's excited, that wants to come out and see a team play, and then a farm system that, that has been productive. I think those are things that, not specific for me, those things for any GM, that, I think that's what you try to accomplish and provide to an organization.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'll go to Kyle Glazer. You're on mute, Kyle.
Hey, AJ, given that it would have been 7 losing seasons in 9 years without this furious finish, and you guys have never had a 90-win team in those 9 years, have there been any conversations about philosophical changes to Major League roster construction?
We're always talking about, like best practices, best ways to do things, how to be best in class. Again, I think, for us, like, I think those are always conversations. I think obviously the first few years, I think we were pretty realistic that we were in a rebuilding situation. And I think the marching orders, hey, when we get to 20, we want to have a team year in, year out that can contend for a World Series title. And, so far, like, again, we've been in the playoffs a couple times, 2 times, and, have fallen short 2 times. So, again, I think for us, we want to be there every single year. We want to be in October every year. So, I think, again, we finished the year very strong, and it's a testament to our players, that we didn't quit. There was no quit in that group. And that's something that, again, we'll look to build off of for next year. Yeah, I think the marching orders every year, go play in October. We've done it a couple of times. We've fallen short a few times. We'll learn from it. And, if that means we got to make some changes, we will. But ultimately, that's what we're looking to try to do.
Just to follow up, as you guys go through those self-evaluation processes, is there anything you guys have identified that you feel like you need to improve upon specifically?
I mean, again, like I think with this, with this year's big league team, I think we felt like, from a talent standpoint, we had I think, yeah, if you're going to win it. You look at the playoff teams, you got to have your, the players that you're relying on and counting on to have, have seasons that are consistent with with what they've done in the past, where you think they're capable of doing going forward. And, I think one of the things this year, we just didn't quite have that from our top guys, and I think that's something that we'll talk about. Hey, how do we make sure we're very prepared for the season? How do we make sure we put them in environments where they're going to perform and succeed? If we think that the mix has to change a little bit, we'll do that. But, again, we've seen it just as recently as last year, a team that was one step away from the World Series with a pretty similar mix. I think we have the talent to win a World Series here. I think it's probably refining a few things to make sure we're ready to roll when the season starts.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up here with John Howard.
AJ, one question. I think one of the frustrating things for the fans is to see an outfielder bat 184 through an entire season, and then the next year come back, bat 198. And rather than ask you, will Trent Grisham be back? I want to ask you, if a player bats 184, is welcome back, holds a starting job the entire year, bats 198, does that send a message to the other players that underachieving is acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Grish, again, I think he'll be the first to tell you that the last 2 years offensively, he's capable of more, and obviously we feel like he's capable of more. Clearly, like with Trent, he plays defense at a Gold Glove clip. So I think that's both sides of the ball. That's part of the equation with Trent, but clearly for us and for Trent, this offseason is. You look back at 2020, he was a huge part of what we did in 21. I think it's getting him into a place where, we're seeing more of that version of Trent Grisham here, next year, because what he's able to do defensively and in center field and Petco is a real thing. But yeah, I think, the offensive improvement component for him, it's something that we've got to make sure we get right going forward. And I think he'll be the first to tell you that, and that'll be a big goal for us this offseason.
All right. Thanks, AJ. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.